Okay, so check out this big chungus of a book. I mean, you could stop bullets with this big ass book. The Stand by Stephen King. Now let's get the bullshit out of the way. This book didn't need to be this long. There's a lot of miscellaneous here, but there's still some gold to be found. So here's how it goes down. I'm 300 pages in, and the characters are still fucking around. I'm 600 pages in, and the characters are barely starting to, walk around, leave their native homes, right? And that's like half of the book. So, midway through this book is when these characters start to move, right? And this book has like 1,300 pages. The apocalypse is here. People are dying. People are dead from a virus. And it takes a long time for the characters to move, to get active. It's a bit weird, right? They just hang around like they're in shock. I get it. It's whatever. You know what the problem is with this book? The problem with this book is there's a lot of hanging around, doing nothing, and then there's a lot of walking around on fucking highways and a lot of meticulous geographic nonsense. We're on highway this, we're on street this, we're on this road, we are on this route. It doesn't make any sense. You don't have to be this specific when it comes to, locations, streets, highways, names. It does not interest me. Right? It's actually boring. Moving on. So finally, the characters, they finally get to Boulder, Colorado, and that is where civilization finally rekindles. There is where civilization finally begins anew after the plague. And yet again, here is where I think the book suffers tremendously. Okay? And let me tell you why. When they finally settle in Boulder, Colorado, the free zone, that section of the book, which is the second half of the book, that portion of the book reminded me of the latter seasons of The Walking Dead. Okay? It reminded me of the latter seasons of The Walking Dead. That's how boring it was. Right now, again, this book was written in like 78, and it's portraying like the early 90s. But they have this free zone, and they're doing nothing with it. There's nothing interesting happening in the free zone. Right? We got hundreds of people, we got thousands of people, and then we have tens of thousands of people gathering in one place, and nothing really happens. Right? Nothing really happens. What do our main cast of characters do here? They establish some sort of committee, based on democratic whatever, and they gather in meetings to make decisions and make vote on whatever, and then they vote on another committee which deals with disposing of the dead people that are still in Boulder, and then they have another committee that deals with making a list of people, who come into Boulder, Colorado, where they live, names, etc. And this is just pure bureaucracy. It's dull. It's bland. It's boring. Nobody wants to read about how do you establish a modern civilization. It's dull. This is where the book really suffers because nothing really happens here. You have to sit through dull meeting after dull meeting, listening to Stu Redman talk about nothing, and everybody just clapping and approving, and the committee this and the committee that. It's a dull, okay? It's dull, no cap. It's dull. Before we move into the final chapters of this book and what happens in this book, we should talk about the characters. Now listen, listen. This book is about characters. It's about developing characters. And Stephen King does an amazing job. This book is not about the journey. This book is not about crazy revelations. This book is not about taking us to new heights of storytelling. This book is not about. Actually, this book isn't even about telling us what really happens in this book, behind the scenes, right? This book is a character piece. Now, the characters. First of all, I thought that Stu Redman would be the protagonist of this novel. And as you read along, he kind of becomes part of the background, which is unfortunate because you can tell that deep down he has protagonist material, but at the same time he doesn't really rise to the challenge. And as you read along, you can see that Stephen King struggled with Stu Redman becoming a protagonist. Because on the surface, he is your average Joe, your usual guy, but then as you read along, you find out that he has a lot more qualities that meets the eye, but he keeps those interesting qualities way deep down. He is elected as leader in this free zone for some reason. I mean, he is elected the sheriff or whatever, the law enforcer, and then he's elected the head of the committee, and he is also the speaker. And I get it, he is a solid dude, right? But at the same time, he is just an average Joe. If you judge him based only on his demeanor and physical appearance, he seems pretty average, right? Right. So it is unfortunate that Stu never reached the heights of being a true protagonist. He had, he was eligible to become a protagonist, but I feel like chapter after chapter, it seems like Stephen King struggled with Stu Redman. And unfortunately, I think he failed because Stu Redman did not become protagonist material. Other characters. Let's be honest. I don't understand what was this deal with Mother Abigail. This Mother Abigail character, the hype that followed her until we actually meet her personally was tremendous, and it was a total disappointment. It was a total blue balls scenario, right? Before we meet her, there's this hype, there's this unspoken promise that we're gonna find some revelations, that we're gonna be told certain things, and then we meet her, and it's just uneventful. It is uninteresting. It is, what's going on here, bro? This is, in essence, Mother Abigail. And I don't understand what Stephen King really wanted to do with this character. All the good guys have visions of this old lady that's like 100 years old, 108 years old. Apparently she is closer to the divine. She knows exactly what God wants, etc., etc. She lived this long because God wished it, because she had the purpose of supervising and ushering this group of survivors into the free zone. And I thought that she would become this sort of guru, this sort of I don't know, this sort of spiritual leader. And Mother Abigail failed miserably. When we arrive at the free zone with Mother Abigail, yet again, nothing really happens. She, in essence, is just this old lady. And just when you think something's gonna happen, she gets a message from the Lord and she just bounces away. We don't know where she goes. We don't know what she does. But she simply abandons all the people in the free zone because apparently she was too arrogant and God had to punish her. So she went into the wild, she came back, and then she died. And the only thing she tells is that certain characters have to go to Randall Flagg to make their stand, whatever the fuck that means. Okay, so Mother Abigail, unfortunately, is yet again another character that does not meet the standard. She is overhyped, and then when she has to prove her worth, she fails miserably. uh, then we have Nick Andros, the deaf mute. I like him. He's a great character, but there are limits to what Stephen King does with him. You know, unfortunately, we only have to understand him through his notes, and he dies in a terrible way. It is unfortunate. Yet again, Nick Andros failed to reach his utmost potential because this is what really happens in this book. When the people arrive at the free zone, they attain a sort of stagnation and they don't, they become too comfortable. And because of that, they do not struggle anymore. Therefore, they have nothing else to say or do that should impress the reader. The moment they arrive at the free zone is where their character development you know struggles a bit, right? So that was Nick Andros, and then we have Larry Underwood, who essentially is a sort of I don't know what Larry's problem is. I think he is a mama's boy, kind of, right? And all throughout this book, I really don't know what his real struggle is. I guess becoming mature, becoming an adult. I don't know. uh, but Larry is one of the people that is picked to go to Randall Flagg for some reason, and then the other people are Stu Redman, Glenn Bateman, I think his name is, and Ralph whatever, right? So Larry is a strange case. I don't know. Larry is a sus type of guy. I don't know what his real deal is. He is really annoying at times. You know, he is what I would call a soy boy, basically. He is milk toast. Larry is all about the talk, but when he has to do the walk, he can't walk at all, basically, right? And we're gonna move on to more interesting characters. Okay, let's talk about Harold Lauder. Okay, listen. Harold is the tragic figure of this novel. Harold had all the potential in the world. Larry could have been tremendous. Larry could have been a cornerstone of the free zone. Harold could have been a true leader, right? I think Harold could have been what Stu Redman could not. Harold has more personality. Harold has more, well, let's not call it charisma, basically, but he has more dynamic flair, or whatever you want to call it. But unfortunately, Harold has an Achilles heel, and we're gonna talk about it. Harold is a bit too young. I think he's like 17 when the book starts, right? And that is one major flaw. His youth, his sort of immaturity, his juvenile mindset in certain areas, right? He's a bit too emotional. He's too young, okay? I wouldn't call him too emotional. He's too young, and that is why he is too emotional. He doesn't have that life experience just yet. He's not mature enough. But if he took another path, he could have been somebody tremendous, right? And Harold is a true example of what can happen when a man is unexperienced, and when a man is obsessed with a woman, he becomes the laughing stock. And unfortunately, Harold becomes the laughing stock of this book, which is painful. It is painful to see, because I have to say this again, he is full of potential. He is interesting, he is capable, he is competent, and yet, because of his youth, because he is so young, because he falls in love with Franny, we're gonna get to Franny, right? With all of his intelligence, with all of his capabilities and faculties, he somehow takes a long time to understand that Franny belongs to the streets, Franny ain't no good, and he is terribly hurt because of Franny's rejection or whatever, and he goes crazy, essentially, right? And it's unfortunate to see, you know. You know why Harold is so painful to read is because I think a lot of us have been in his position. I know I've been in his position. Of course, I didn't take his route, but for a while I understand. For a while I have been in his position where I was obsessed with somebody, and it turned out that that somebody didn't care at all, of course. But I didn't take his route. But a lot of guys go to the deep end because of some female or whatever. And the funny part is that this guy is 17 and Franny is like 21 or whatever, and Franny, who is an adult in this situation, just dropped the ball completely, did nothing. I mean, she should have just told this guy straight up, listen, dude, you're a kid. You know, no offense, my guy. You're young. I'm just not into you. If you want to be friends, that's fine. You know, but she didn't do anything about it, and the cancer just metastasized in Harold, and this is what happens. Okay, this is what happens. In some cases, some guys might lose their shit for some reason, you know, but I understand why Harold. Listen, I understand why Harold does what he does, but that does not mean that I forgive or pardon his actions, because they are crimes, they are heinous. But I understand why he did it, right? I can put myself in his shoes and understand why, but I don't forgive his actions. It's very important, because a lot of people think that if you understand why, the reasons why something happens, then that means somehow that you sympathize or even um, vibe with these actions. No, you have to understand the reasons and the motivations. That does not mean that you forgive or that you empathize, right? So Harold is the tragic figure of this book. Harold could have been the protagonist. Um, it is unfortunate what happened to Harold. And the way he went out, it was just crushing. It was just horrible to read, right? He breaks his leg, and then he has to shoot himself, and you know, he gets he gets passed over a bit too easily, and that adds a bit more tragedy to his situation. All right, he was ignored his entire life. He was bullied and made fun of his entire life, and then even at the end, as he commits suicide, we just move over. We move on basically as the reader. It's you know it's it's tragic, right? And Harold Lauder should be a lesson to a lot of dudes out there, especially if you're younger, because we've all been there. We've all been there as young dudes. Um, we simped for the wrong person for the wrong reasons because they showed us a bit of affection, and we took it too seriously. That rejection, we took it too seriously, just like Harold did. But what I'm saying is that you should move on. That person that hurt you is not worth it. Okay? That person did not deserve you, and that person does not deserve for you to obsess over. So seriously, okay? Just move on. It sucks. The situation sucks, but it is your duty to move on, grow the fuck up, and live your life as it should be lived, okay? Because listen, Harold's character speaks to me, and probably if you're a dude, his character speaks to you. We've all been there in one way or another, right? And his backstory is just awful, right? His parents just fucking, they thought he was a genius at first, and then his sister came along and they just ignored his ass. And then for the rest of his life, everybody mocked and teased and taunted, even though it was obvious that he had the faculties, he had the skills, he had the knowledge, he had all of these great traits. But what Harold lacked was the wisdom to step back, calm down, rearrange your priorities, grow the fuck up, and move on, right? It hurts. I know it hurts, but move on. There's more to life than, busting a nut or whatever, right? Harold did not have, an uncle to tell him the reality of his situation. In essence, Harold had more charm, he had more dynamism, he had more of everything than all the other characters combined, you know. Which is heartbreaking because here is somebody that has all the potential, and he does nothing with it, right? Because even even when he is in the free zone, people kind of recognize that Harold is on another level. He got that knowledge, he got them ideas, he puts effort in, right? He gives advice to people, he steps in, he's not all talk, he gets the job done. He gets his hand dirty, etc. And people kind of recognize that this kid, listen, he is the only kid in this free zone that actually does something. Okay? He is the only kid that is on the level of the adults, and at least half the time, this kid is actually above the adults in this free zone in terms of his competence, in terms of his ideas, etc. Right? And a lot of the adults recognize that Harold is on another level, but unfortunately, Harold by this point is too far gone All he does is smile his fucking weird ass smile, and that puts people off. If he calmed down and stopped smiling his goofy ass smile, maybe if he just would have been honest with people, if he just would have been straightforward, maybe somebody in this free zone would have become his friend. Maybe he would have opened up to this person, and maybe because of that he would have moved on. He would have calmed down, and then quite possibly he would have become the leader or a leader of the free zone, because obviously he is a very competent dude, and it is impressive that he is still like 17 or 18 years old, and a lot of the adults here are just lost, right? Anyway, so that is Harold. It is unfortunate what has happened to him, and I could relate to him. I think that this is where Stephen King really shines. He made one character that I think a lot of people can relate to. And now we're gonna move on to the true villain of this book, okay? The true villain. Okay, because maybe some people might think that Randall Flagg is the villain, and we're gonna get to him soon enough. Randall Flagg ain't no villain. You know who the real villain of this book is? Franny Goldsmith. Okay, Franny Goldsmith. No cap. Here we are. Okay, because I really wanted to talk about this B word right here. She is, okay, listen, she is a terrible person. Okay, she is a terrible person. Extremely selfish, extremely self absorbed, etc. Right? First of all, she should have told Harold straight up, listen, dude, there is no way that this is gonna happen, okay? And that would have saved a lot of tears. But apparently, Franny couldn't be bothered with this little task, right? Because she had a lot of things to do, and because of this, a lot of people suffered. Franny is fucking creepy, bro. She is creepy. The way she talks, her mannerisms, her monologues, the way she writes in her diary, bro. I don't know. She is fucking creepy to me. Okay, she is creepy to me. If you like her, please tell me in the comments. Tell me why do you like Franny, because almost everything about her is creepy as hell. She's weird, bro, but not in a good way. Right? She is fucking, I don't know, bizarre. Like, whenever I think of Franny, the first word that comes to mind is, ew. Get away from me, bro. Get away from me, Franny. Just stop talking. Right? She is fucking creepy. She's a creeper. And this cannot be denied. Um, like I said, I mean, she has this quirk, if you want to call it. I mean, she giggles like some sort of fucking dum dum. I don't know, because of some random shit. She giggles uncontrollably. I mean, she bites her tongue and she hurts herself while giggling. And even though she is in terrible pain, she still giggles. And while I'm reading this, I just feel like I just wanna, just once, right? Just an elbow to the face. I mean, she's fucking creepy, bro. She's odd. She is not cute. She is not wholesome. Everything about her is just off-putting. She is off-putting, right? She is the true villain of this book. Not only because how she treats Harold, but because of how her personality is. Okay, her personality is just yikes. Like, I don't know what's up with Stu Redman falling in love with this bitch. Okay, and Harold too. I don't know why these two dudes are so enamored by this creeper. She belongs to the streets. Okay, she belongs to the streets. She is trash. Okay, she is off-putting, And this book speaks volumes to her character. She is atrocious. Atrocious. Alright? Did you really have to write in your fucking journal that all that shit about Harold? Did you really have to write in your journal about, I don't know, busting a nut to Stu Redman? I don't know. And then fucking Harold finds the fucking, steals the fucking diary and he reads that shit. Oh, yeah, and it sets him off. It was fucking, ugh. Cringe. Cringe, right? Because of her. Now listen, I understand that she is not actually directly responsible for the actions of Harold. I understand that, but I mean, she could have taken a hint, my guy. She could have just done something to avoid all of this tragedy, and she does nothing because she's so self-centered. And oh boy, she's in love with Stu Redman, and all the while, fucking Harold is about to transform into a fucking school shooter, right? He is about to become the Unabomber, and this bitch is like, oh well, I'll do it later, and she never does, right? So yikes, bro. She is something else. She is a terrible person and a terrible friend because she does absolutely nothing to avert and avoid this situation or to alleviate the tension, or she does absolutely nothing, and that is why this makes her a bad person. And not only that, but she does nothing to alleviate the situation, and she only seeks and strives and hunts for her own personal satisfaction, right? And you can see this from her journal. If you read her journal, you can really understand her mindset. She's all about herself. She's all about, oh boy, me, and all the while, all this horrible stuff is going around her. Right? Pure trash. Pure trash. Franny is the true villain of this book. And listen, one more thing. So, somewhere along the line, Franny has one of these monologues, and for some reason she talks about, back in the day, women were, basically slaves, basically chattel to men, to society, and it's true, of course. So she has this feministic monologue about, oh boy, women, they had it tough back in the day, but now women are free, women are independent, of course, yada yada, all that good shit, which I agree with. No problem, no cap, no problem. But you know what she does afterwards? After she has this monologue about, oh boy, now women are strong and independent. You know what she does? A member of her group, I think Mike was his name, or Max, he suffers from, appendicitis, right? So he is in terrible pain. He is screeching because of the pain. And you know what Franny does? She goes to Stu Redman and I think Glenn, and you know what she does? She tells them, do something. Now, I don't know if Stephen King wrote this intentionally or if it was, a random thing that happened, but if he wrote this intentionally, it is a stroke of genius, because here is where Franny's two characters shows, right? So she has this fucking monologue about now women are finally liberated and they're strong and independent. And when something bad happens, she goes to these two dudes and she says, do something. Do something. Well, how about you do something, Franny? You're not that pregnant just yet. How about you do something? Because you're strong and independent, right? So I love this brilliant example of hypocrisy. Now listen, why did this scene really tickle my fancy? It's because I have experienced it time and time again. Now, this is not to shit on women, but certain women in my life, they also talked about this, I'm strong, independent, blah, blah, blah. But when the shit hit the fan, let me tell you, that they went straight to the first guy around and they told him, do something, and man up. right? Hypocrisy, hypocritical, right? Um, yeah, so Franny does a lot of injustice to women. She does a lot of injustice overall, right? She's a terrible person. But if you like her, please tell me in the comment sections. To me, Franny is trash. She belongs to the streets. Okay? Now, let's talk about Jaboy. Let's talk about Jaboy, Randall Flagg, or whatever other name he uses this week. Okay, listen, I have the Dark Tower series. I'm gonna read it eventually, but I'm gonna judge Randall based on this standalone novel. Okay, after I read the Dark Tower, maybe I'll revise it. But now I'm gonna base my judgment solely on the stand. So, Randall Flagg in this book, okay, Randall Flagg is pure trash. He is bitch made, okay? He is a clown. He's a buffoon. He is not impressive. I am not impressed by what he does or what he says in this book. In this book, he is not the villain. He is subpar, lukewarm. He is a joke of the highest order. Right? And you cannot tell me otherwise. Randall Flagg, listen, I understand that this book was written in like 78 or whatever. But still, Randall Flagg is utter garbage. Right? First of all, the way he acts, the way he talks, the way he is dressed is pure cringe. Pure cringe. Right? Nothing but denim all over, cowboy boots, and he has these fucking how's your pork and a smiley face on his fucking jacket. I mean, is that supposed to like scare anybody? Is that supposed to be sarcastic? I don't he is cringe, right? So he has powers, but he can float a little bit maybe, depending on his mood. He has this third eye that he can spy on people. He can go into certain animals. I guess that's cool. But he doesn't know where these powers really come from. To me, it seems like these are not his real powers. It seems that these powers are borrowed. These powers are not his own because he uses them so poorly. Right? He has the magics, but he can barely do anything. His real power is that he can overpower anybody physically. So he can pick up a grown-ass man and throw him across the room. And that's pretty much it. And apparently he can look at people a certain way and he can cause madness or whatever, which is kind of cool, I guess. But in the way that it is written here, it's lame, right? Uh, his overall plan, it, it is it's lame, right? So let me listen. Here is what I have a problem with. So we know that the free zone is filled with the so-called good guys, right? So Randall Flagg's side in Las Vegas is allegedly filled with all the bad guys that have survived the plague Captain Tripp. So in Las Vegas we have murderers, rapists, child molesters, serial killers, cannibals, right? So all of these bad people are in Las Vegas, and Randall Flagg puts them to work. He makes Boy Scouts out of all of these criminals. You know, they drink only the weakest beer. They have a schedule. They have jobs. They don't do the drugs because the last guy that did the drugs got hanged. Right? He reopens school for the kids there, and I'm just looking at it, and bro, you were supposed to be the right hand man of the devil. What are you doing? What are you doing all of this contradictory bullshit, right? Like all of his actions in Las Vegas are contradictory to his intentions, to his character, right? So he sort of establishes a sort of utopia where all the bad guys are sort of put in their place out of fear of this guy, Randall Flagg, and it's just uh so the bad guys are more tame, they are domesticated, they are basically Boy Scouts because they are afraid of this guy, and nobody steps out of line, and those that do get removed immediately. I mean, it was uh, uh, it was something else to read, right? So so this guy doesn't even know who he is. He apparently he has a lot of fucking personalities and memories in his head, and the personality that we know as Randall Flagg is like the the main one, but all of the others can, take over at some time, which is okay. That's kind of interesting. I want more of that. I want to know more about that aspect of his character, right? Not only that, but this guy, listen, this guy is like the right-hand man, the minion, the lackey of the devil. So we're not even talking about the big boy here. We're not talking about the final boss. This is Randall Flagg is some sort of lackey. He is a minion of the devil. So we're not even going against the final boss here, right? Randall Flagg is like Sauron, but Sauron was fucking cool, right? Randall Flagg is lame from the beginning until the end, and you know, I'm just not impressed in any way, shape, or form about his character at all. And we need to talk about the ending here. Uh, about Trashcan Man coming on with this nuke, and then the literal hand of God sweeping in and activating the nuke, and everybody in Las Vegas dies. I'm a writer myself. I've published 2 novels, 2 books, and whenever I read something like this that is so bizarre, I like to think about the editors that were in charge of this book. And I like to think, was nobody responsible for this book? Was nobody, no editor looked at this and told Stephen King, listen, Stephen, I mean, I think you should rewrite this. I think you should rewrite this. This is inexplicably bad for some reason, right? Was no editor in charge? Did nobody just, tap him on the shoulder? Listen, Steven, I mean, you gotta change this shit. I mean, from what I understand, dude was on cocaine 24/7 back in the 70s and 80s, right? Which is no problem. But this whole hand of God activating the nuke, I don't know. That's some cocaine shit. That's some fucking inexplicable weirdness, right? And it is a cop out. So we got 1,300 pages of just fucking all of this, right? People walking around, committees, yada yada, Mother Abigail, and it all was pointless because it just God swoops in and he solves all of our problems. So all of this struggle, all of this suffering was for nothing because in the end, God came down and he solved the situation. So the people involved here, they actually had no purpose, they actually had no mission. It was a sort of, which leads me to my final complaint. Is like, I've always hated this, God and the devil, they're having this cosmic chess match, and all the people and their lives and their children are nothing but peons, nothing but pawns on the chessboard. Alright, I always hated that. It seems to me that, God is just chilling, and then the devil shows up and he's like, yo, bro, listen, I bet if you torture your believers, I bet, they're not gonna believe in you anymore. How about that, No cap. And God's like, I bet, right? And this is how it happens in my mind. It's like the devil is fucking taunting God, and God is like, oh wait, all right, let me punish these guys and let me show you that they still believe in me. Boom, 2 world wars, right, and so on. Is God really that meek, that pathetic, right? You know, it's this implies, if this is real, that our suffering as mortals is irrelevant, basically, right? And I never liked this, right? Because there is this higher divine plan, that means that your suffering is irrelevant, because let me tell you, you're going to go to heaven, and in heaven you're going to be real chill, my guy. And I'm like, well, that doesn't matter because I still suffered here. What about the suffering here? Right? I don't care if all the good children go to heaven. I still care that they suffered here. That suffering is not erased just because they went to heaven, my guy. You know? So it seems to me that all of this suffering and pain that happens in the world is just because the devil is taunting God, and God is so meek that he has to prove himself to the devil. All right, let me show you that they still believe me. Boom. A plague or whatever. It's just, God cannot be this meek, right? But then you think, oh, wait a minute, we are made in the image of God, in the likeness of God. So if that is true, then that means that God is like us in some way, and that means that, oh shit, he is that meek, and that means we're fucked. Because if God is in any way, shape, or form like us, because we are in his likeness, then we're fucked. Okay? So that's about it. Like, the stand was alright. I don't know what the real stand, the final stand was, but it was an overall enjoyable book. Will I read it again? Probably not. Probably not. It's a big ass book, and it does not deserve to be reread. But it was enjoyable. It was enjoyable. Do you know how this book should have ended? It should have ended. It should have ended. Stu Redman loses everything, and because he loses everything, he walks on the highway into the, into the unknown, into the darkness, and he disappears, and nobody saw him ever again. That would have been an amazing ending. Okay, that's about it. See ya.